And joining us right now, great pleasure to welcome to our show today a woman who's written a very interesting book and it is already doing well on the bestseller list. That's always good news for authors. It's called Be the Miracle, 50 Lessons for Making the Impossible Possible. We're joined today by New York Times bestselling author Regina Britt by telephone from Cleveland today. How are you, Regina?
I'm great, Doug. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, good to have a chance to talk. Yeah, I know you've kind of written a series of books in this kind of realm. I guess the previous one was called God Never Blinks, right?
Yeah, the first one was God Never Blinks, and that came out of a column I wrote for the Plain Dealer of 50 Lessons Life Taught Me. And the column went viral, and people started to forward it all over the world. It was pretty amazing.
Isn't it amazing when you think you can write something, put it online, and just sit back and forces take over sometimes, and your words go all over the place.
What's funny is somebody took the email and wrote that I was 90 years old on top of it, so I have
a
lot
really?
of people calling me to make sure I'm still alive.
But I guess that really has kind of changed the whole industry, particular, I mean, broadcasting too, but for writers as well, I guess, right?
You know, it really has. You know, you can reach so many people with the internet. I mean, globally, I get emails from India, Australia, China. It's kind of a great equalizer, the internet. You know, there's no walls. You can go directly to the people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. There's a lot of junk up there you have to weed through, but I think it's a great tool as well. So I think that helps people in our industry just to get the word out that may not have been able to do it in years past, right? Particularly with a book.
You know, it is great. It's great for a lot of writers, too, that maybe don't have an outlet. I have a column in the newspaper and a radio show, but for anybody that just wants to write, put their information out on a blog, it's really a great chance to reach people. It really does connect people.
Talk a little bit about the current book called Be the Miracle. I mean, we talked about the previous one. What's the difference between the two books?
You know, the first book, I think, reflected more on some of the lessons in my own life from having had cancer 13 years ago and my journey as an unwed mother, a single parent for 18 years. The new book, Be the Miracle, it tells some of my journey and lessons, but also a lot of people I've met along the way that are in jobs of the kind of people we pass every day, but maybe we don't give them the attention they deserve, but they're people that can really make a huge difference in our life. And, you know, some of them, one is a gentleman who writes resumes for men who just got out of prison. He volunteers, and they call him the resume man. And he takes these broken lives, and he puts together the best pieces of who they are and writes up a resume, types it up, so they have a chance in the world to do something. And there's people like that all over really every city that are in these little pockets doing great things.
And you heard some of these stories, just people emailing you, or just people in your everyday life, or how did you kind of collect these?
You know, emailing, you run into them every day. I swear, every time you go out of your house, somebody's got a story to tell, and a lot of us we just kind of need to open our hearts and our ears and listen, and they're right there in front of us. One of my first lessons is start where you are. It was about a convenience store worker who upset the life of a child who had been kidnapped. The kidnapper brought the child into the convenience store early in the morning. The child had been missing all night, and the convenience store worker was attentive, greeting customers, doing her job to the best of her ability. Saw the little girl, matched the photo in the paper, called the police, saved the child's life.
Wow.
You know, sometimes we take for granted those kind of people, the hard workers that work those shifts that maybe we don't want, the real early morning or late at night, and you never know the power they have to change the world, to save a life even.
You hear the word miracle, and I think people kind of equate that word with almost like, you know, a magic trick in a sense. But miracles can be small, at least seem like they're small, but a lot of great power can come out of them, right? Do you kind of think that the word may be a little bit misused in some sense?
You know, Doug, I think people think miracles are, you know, the parting of the Red Sea,
right? That big, huge.
Wine. Like you said, some kind of gigantic magic trick, or that you have to be the head of a company or have a lot of power in the world to make a big difference. And really, miracles to me are when a person decides, I'm going to be the one to either save a life or transform a life in a way that wouldn't have happened without somebody stepping up to the plate. And we all have the power to do that.
Yeah, I think you say medical miracles and all that, but when you look at it, technology is miraculous, and we're doing this, via electronic technology, television, internet, radio. I mean, it's all in a sense a miracle in a way that people have created, right?
It is true, and even when you look at medical miracles, you know, sometimes it's just giving people hope. When I had breast cancer 13 years ago, I remember my surgeon, before he went to check the pathology, he was laying in my hospital bed and he squeezed my toes, and I just, that moment of connection, that human connection, I knew he was like on my team, and I'll never forget that 13 years, you know, that one little moment of connection. I knew I wasn't going to go through this alone, like I had people on my side. So sometimes things that make us feel like we're cared for in the world. It's not the gigantic cure my cancer, but be with me while I go through it.
Yeah, it's amazing the power in people's mind. People can give you a positive thought, and then that can carry people a long way if they're going through tough times. So, and that's kind of what you write about in the book here. What has been the reaction? Obviously, you said you've gotten a lot of emails and people call you all the time, but from the previous book and the new one that's just out now, I guess people must now look to send you different stories in their lives, right?
Yeah, every time I have about a book signing, I swear people share a story and I think, oh my gosh, that's another chapter for another book. There's just miracles everywhere. And it's really about sharing hope. We sort of carry each other along in this path in life. And one of my lessons about my book is carry as you climb. As you climb the ladder in life, carry somebody up with you. You don't go up alone. Any success you have, other people help you get it. So help everybody else with that next one. And the reason I wrote this book too, so many people are going through tough times with the economy, foreclosures, job loss, all that. Sometimes you feel like they say, wow, we need a miracle to fix this. Well, a lot of us can be that miracle. We can help find a person that job or help them find some meaning in their life while they're looking for work. I think it's up to each of us to say, what's my part going to be here?
Yeah, look outward if you can instead of always inward, right? That's probably the key to that, I guess. Obviously, if you're going through a tough time, you're trying to solve that, but try and look elsewhere, and maybe you can help somebody else. That'll help you, right?
Yeah, and sometimes the miracle you do isn't maybe at your job. It could be in the volunteer work you do, or it could be in the neighborhood. You could be the dad the kid down the street doesn't have. Just throwing a football with that kid. When I grew up in my little town, Ravenna, there was a guy named Paul Policana, and he would come out every day and throw the football to us. Well, my dad had 11 kids and was working all the time, and he didn't have time to be throwing a football. But Paul did it, and I never forgot that. That was one of our neighbors who said, I'm gonna be a dad to these kids a little bit while their dad's busy working.
Just kind of reading your website, Regina, your blogs. You've done some book signings, and you talk a little bit about in some of your writings there the great turnout you've been getting, not only from the previous book but for the current one. That's got to make you feel good.
It's really something, Doug, that I've gone to libraries, and I love libraries. We had 11 kids, and we didn't have a lot of money for books, so my dad took us to the library every week. Those poor librarians, all the bright kids, 11 of them would come running through the library. But, I have a lot of book signings at libraries, and I really appreciate libraries all over this country, free books for families like I grew up in. And so I do a lot of signings here, and we've had hundreds of people show up for book signings. And I think it's because they can relate to these lessons, because everybody wants more hope in their life. Everybody wants to feel like they can be that little spark, be that little miracle for others.
The name of the book is called Be the Miracle, 50 Lessons for Making the Impossible Possible. We've been talking with Regina Brett today. Regina, I know it's just been out a couple of weeks and it's already doing so well, but let the folks know where they can get the book or maybe contact you.
They can go to my website, reginabrett.com. There's all the information there. You can go to Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Costco, selling it pretty much anywhere. It's kind of a beautiful book. The first one was bright orange. You almost need the sunglasses. It was so bright. And the new one, it's kind of this, almost like a Tiffany gift blue.
Blue, yeah.
I tell people it's like a Tiffany gift, but a little bit cheaper.
Are you working on another in this kind of series, or do you have another project you're working on now?
I'd like to do another book, and I'd like to focus on how to find meaning in your work, because so many of us spend a third of our lives at our job, working 8 to 5, or 9, whatever, 7 to 3. And if you don't love your job, you want to know, where do I find my meaning? And so I'd love to write a book to help people kind of rediscover their passion, whether it's at work or a hobby or their volunteer work, and how to find that meaningful work if you haven't found it yet. So I think that kind of find your grail. Where's your own mission in life? That's the book I'd like to write now.
That's great. Yeah. When that's out, love to have you back on at that time. I like your little quote on the front page of your website. Get busy on the possible. I think those are good words to live by.
They really are, because there is a lot that's possible, Doug. A lot of us can only look at the impossible, but usually there's one step that okay, I can handle that one step. And that's what got me through cancer. Every day I'd say, okay, what's the next right step here? Because I don't want to look at the whole journey. I don't want to look at 4 months of chemo and 6 weeks of daily radiation, but I can handle one day of this.
Well, Regina Brett, it's been a pleasure to talk to you for a few minutes. We'll look forward to the next visit. In the meantime, Be the Miracle, 50 Lessons for Making the Impossible Possible is the current book out. And thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you, Doug. Take care.